The introduction of the long 7.5cm gun-armed Panzer IV Ausführung G dramatically shifted the role of this tank type within the German army, elevating it from a support vehicle to a primary combat tank. With its formidable armament, it possessed the capability to effectively engage most adversaries on the battlefield in 1942. Recognizing its exceptional performance, there was a surge in demand for Panzer IVs with enhanced firepower, leading to the development of the Ausführung H version. Similar to the G, the H underwent minor modifications aimed at streamlining production. But first, have you ever wondered about your family's history? Perhaps there is an unknown ancestor who fought in the trenches of the Great War, or another who braved the deserts of North Africa during World War II. Thanks to MyHeritage, our sponsor and the #1 family history service, our team manager Gareth has been able to explore these fascinating questions. At Tank Encyclopedia, we emphasize the importance of remembering the past and understanding historical records. With MyHeritage, Gareth traced his lineage back to 1750 and uncovered a deeper sense of his origins. Even if you know little about your family's past, MyHeritage can help you discover new ancestors and records effortlessly. One standout feature is Instant Discoveries, which leverages MyHeritage's extensive database of family trees and historical records. This feature allows you to expand and enrich your family tree in just one click, potentially adding up to 40 to 50 people or new family photos you've never seen before. Building your family tree with MyHeritage is not only fun, but also incredibly easy. Gareth started with just 6 relatives, and now his tree boasts nearly 100 names, uncovering many unexpected connections along the way. For example, by using the 1851 England and Wales census, he discovered 6 new family members. In addition to genealogical research, MyHeritage offers advanced AI technology to repair, enhance, and colorize old photographs. You can even animate them. We tested this feature on some Ram tanks from a training exercise and we're thrilled with the results. Start a 14-day free trial on MyHeritage today to build your family tree and unlock your past. You may be amazed by what you discover. We sure were. To begin your journey, you can use the link from the pinned comment or scan the QR code on screen. Now, back to the tank. While the Panzer IV Ausführung H may appear as little more than an encore of its predecessor, under different historical circumstances it could have emerged as a distinctly different vehicle, at least in appearance. Despite pre-war German recognition of the advantages of angled armor for improving protection, early tank designs did not incorporate it, largely due to limitations of an underdeveloped industry used to producing tanks with simpler, flat armor. However, experiences during the initial year of conflict, particularly those against the formidable T-34 in the Soviet Union, prompted a shift in this mindset. Subsequent tank projects, including the Panthers and King Tigers, as well as various self-propelled anti-tank guns, embraced the use of angled plates for improved defense capabilities. During production of the Panzer IV G, German military circles began laying the groundwork for a slightly enhanced version of the tank. There was a consensus that it warranted a comprehensive overhaul, or at least certain components did. The concept had a brand new superstructure integrating heavily angled plates into its design. This initiative took shape towards the end of 1942, with Krupp entrusted to spearhead the entire design process. The focal point of the new superstructure was its frontal armor, slated to be both highly sloped and 80 mm thick. The angled glacis armor was slightly less robust at 50 mm. This configuration promised immunity against the majority of anti-tank weapons in use at the time. Contemplation extended to reinforcing the turret side of the armor to a potential 45 mm thickness. However, this augmentation would come with the additional weight of nearly 900 kilograms. To maintain optimal mobility, broader tracks were slated for adoption. The Germans were also considering using a new suspension system featuring 6 larger road wheels. However, the entire project was short-lived. In February 1943, Krupp engineers estimated that the total weight, including the extra armor and wider tracks, would reach around 28.2 tons. Even the standard Panzer IV Ausf G, burdened with the additional weight of the gun and armor, was already approaching the limits of its chassis and suspension. A weight of over 28 tons would impose significant stress on the suspension, the engine, and the transmission, potentially leading to breakdowns and drastically reducing its service life. Another blow to this project came with Adolf Hitler's directive to double Panzer IV production. Incorporating the new superstructure and possibly even a new suspension would result in substantial delays, which the Germans could ill afford amidst the demands of wartime production. Ultimately, pursuing this project would likely have generated more problems than benefits, leading to its swift abandonment without ever advancing to the prototype stage. In 1943, Germany faced a significant challenge: the depletion of its tank reserves due to heavy losses in combat, which exceeded the capacity of current production lines to replace. Responding to this crisis, Adolf Hitler appointed Albert Speer as the German Minister of Armament, having to oversee the nation's entire war production. At the same time, ambitious tank projects like the Tiger and Panther were underway, exerting pressure on the resources available for other vehicles like the Panzer IV. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, Speer and Generaloberst Heinz Guderian, the Inspector General of the Armored Troops, advocated for prioritizing the production of the Panzer IV and Stug III. Initially, Hitler supported this strategy. However, he later reversed course, insisting on the development of additional new projects. This decision only served to further complicate Germany's industrial and logistical challenges. As the demand for more tanks grew increasingly urgent, the development of the next iteration of the Panzer IV series, the H, faced constraints that necessitated maintaining its existing design. Nevertheless, efforts were made to enhance its performance, primarily through the refinement of the turret design. One such endeavor, undertaken by Krupp and labeled the Vereinfachten Turm, or simplified turret, omitted visor ports and the commander's cupola while eliminating the right side hatch. Its front armor thickness was 80 mm, with side and rear armor at 42. By mid-1944, the decision had been made to gradually phase out Panzer IV production in favor of versions utilizing its chassis for anti-tank purposes. Consequently, investing in a new turret, despite potential advantages, was deemed redundant and it was abandoned. While the proposed turret projects failed to materialize, significant emphasis was placed on enhancing the drive components for improved durability. Swift measures were taken to develop and integrate a sturdier drive system. German efforts to ramp up tank production saw significant progress with the introduction of the Panzer IV Ausführung H in 1943. Prior to this, production of the Panzer IV had been relatively low for a variety of reasons. However, the H marked a turning point, achieving a monthly output of nearly 300 units, with a peak of 354 manufactured in December 1943. This was a substantial improvement compared to earlier versions, which often took over a year to reach similar production numbers. For instance, in 1941, the average monthly production of Panzer IVs was around 40. The Panzer IV H was manufactured by Krupp, Vomag, and Nibelungenwerke. Between May 1943 and February 1944, a total of 2,322 Panzer IV Hs were produced. The Panzer IV Ausführung H maintained the overall design of its predecessor with few alterations introduced during its production run. These included interlocking armor plates, reducing the number of return rollers to 3 and making them out of metal to save rubber, simplifying the rear idler design, improving the final drive unit, removing the turret pistol and vision ports, top turret armor increases, and the use of protective 5mm thick skirts, called Schützen, were standardized. Armament for the Panzer IV Ausf H was comprised of the 7.5cm L48 long gun, although a few vehicles were equipped with the shorter L43. Notably, a light machine gun was mounted on the commander's cupola, offering the capability to engage both air and ground targets. Finally, plans were in place for the installation of a Nahverteidigungswaffe, basically a grenade launcher mounted on top of the turret. However, due to shortages of this weapon, these installations were rare. Despite Germany's efforts to bolster the numbers of new Panzer IVs, this proved unattainable. Most panzer divisions of 1943 still had older vehicles like the Panzer III in their inventory. For instance, during the Battle of Kursk, the Germans deployed 583 L-43 and 302 L-48 armed Panzer IV tanks. In stark contrast, there were over 1,000 Panzer IIIs present during this pivotal engagement. Even as availability of Panzer IIIs dwindled later on due to attrition and halted production, the panzer divisions were supplemented by more advanced Panther tanks. Consequently, the Panzer IV found itself in an unusual predicament. Despite an increase in numbers, there were never enough of them to fully equip all the units that needed them. The introduction of long-barrel Panzer IVs proved to be highly effective in combat. For instance, during a span from July 1943 to January 1944, the 16th Panzer Grenadier Division boasted eliminating 239 tanks and 12 self-propelled guns, along with 34 trucks and over 250 artillery and anti-tank guns. However, this success came at a cost, as the division lost 37 tanks, including 7 Panzer IVs. Despite suffering setbacks at Kursk, the Soviets continued their relentless push into German defensive lines. Yet, the panzer divisions persisted in their fighting. In Ukraine, the 24th Panzer Division, armed with Panzer IV and Stug IIIs, claimed to have destroyed 184 tanks, 87 anti-tank guns, and 26 artillery pieces in just 9 days, with only 4 tanks lost. Similarly, the 36th Panzer Regiment, active in the Eastern Front from late October 1943 to early December 1943, operated a mixed fleet of 49 Panzer IVs and 44 Stug 3s. Throughout its service, this unit reported the destruction of 211 tanks and 230 artillery and anti-tank guns, despite sustaining losses of 20 Panzer IVs and 16 Stugs. The new Panzer IV Ausführung H found another theater of operation in Italy during 1943. Its combat debut coincided with Axis efforts to halt the Allied landing in Sicily in June 1943. The first Panzer IV was lost when it was struck by naval gunfire on July 12, 1943. Despite determined resistance, the Allies succeeded in capturing Sicily by mid-August, with reports indicating that the Germans had lost 52 Panzer IVs. With Italy poised to surrender to the Allies, the Germans dispatched significant armored units to the region. By August 1943, approximately 773 armored vehicles, including 318 Panzer IVs, were stationed in Italy. The Allied advance faced staunch opposition from the Germans, particularly those along the Gustav defensive line. The challenging terrain of the Italian peninsula, characterized by its hills and mountains, often rendered tank operations difficult and occasionally impractical. Unlike other fronts, swift movement of these vehicles was just unfeasible. As of June 1944, there were 210 operational Panzer IVs in this front, with an additional 62 needing repairs. However, by April 1945, this number had dwindled to just 131 Panzer IVs. At the outside of the Allied liberation of France in June 1944, the Germans possessed approximately 863 Panzer IVs distributed between 11 divisions. Among these, the Panzer Lehr Division, engaged in Normandy, fielded a battalion equipped with 98 Panzer IV Ausf H tanks. This division faced intense combat against British forces in the vicinity of Caen, resulting in a significant attrition of its tank strength. By late June, only 26 operational tanks remained. During this period, the division claimed to have inflicted heavy losses on the enemy, including 85 tanks and 18 self-propelled guns. Additionally, 15 Panzer IVs from this division supported Michael Wittmann's assault at Villers-Bocage. Following the Allied advance, elements of the Panzer Lehr Division launched a counterattack on July 11th, which was repelled, resulting in the loss of 8 more Panzer IV H tanks. Another notable armored unit active in Normandy was the 2nd SS Panzer Division. After being withdrawn from the Eastern Front in April 1944, it underwent rest and refit near Toulouse. This division initially deployed 79 Panzer IVs in the Normandy campaign. However, by late July, its operational strength dwindled to just 37 due to heavy losses sustained in combat around Caen. During the initial phases of the Allied landing, the 12th SS Panzer Division endeavored to challenge Allied positions near Caen. This resulted in the loss of 4 more Panzer IVs. Subsequently, in an attempt to flank Allied positions near Matteo, German tanks encountered fierce resistance from enemy anti-tank weapons, leading to the loss of 6 Panzer IVs while managing to neutralize 1 enemy anti-tank gun. On June 7th, the Panzer IVs experienced more success during an engagement near Uethe, where they encountered a column of Sherman tanks. Despite destroying more than 10 Shermans, the Germans lost 5 tanks in the process. The Germans were eventually beaten back out of France, losing nearly all of their armored vehicles. With the increase in production capacity, the Panzer IV H saw extensive export success to German allies and found utility among various nations through captured vehicles. In 1944, Hungary received approximately 10 to 12 Panzer IV Hs, while Romania acquired up to 130 units of various types, referred to as T4. Initially deployed against the Soviets, these tanks were later turned against the Germans when Romania changed sides, with some remaining in service until 1953. Bulgaria, another German ally, received a supply of Panzer IVs. However, following their shift in allegiance in September 1944, Bulgaria employed these tanks against Germans in the Balkans. Post-war, some Panzer IVs were repurposed as static defense positions along the Turkish border. In 1943, Spain received 20 Panzer IV H tanks, which were eventually replaced by US-supplied tanks in the 1950s. Nevertheless, a few remained in service in Spanish North Africa until 1957. France managed to secure around 60 Panzer IVs for its armored forces, some of which were later sold to Syria in the early 1950s. Czechoslovakia also inherited Panzer IVs left by the Germans after the war, about 150 units of various versions. These tanks were eventually replaced by new Soviet equipment, with the remaining Panzer IVs being sold to Syria. Syria bolstered its armored fleet with over 100 Panzer IVs during the 1950s and 60s. These tanks saw action against Israel in the Water War of 1964-67 and the 6 Days War of June 1967. Israel captured numerous Panzer IVs, which are now displayed in museums. This concludes our video on the Panzer IV Ausf H. What do you think? Should the Germans have focused on producing more Panzer IVs rather than later Panther and Tiger tanks? Share your opinions in the comments section. Start a 14-day free trial on MyHeritage today to build your family tree and unlock your past. To begin your journey, you can use the link from the pinned comment or scan the QR code on screen. Until next time, stay focused and stay tuned.